Writing is about the process. It's about listening and recognizing remnants of your story in the stories of others. When we share our stories with each other, we share the resonance of the human experience. The By Firelight podcast is your invitation to join our circle, a circle of writers, poets, seekers, and storytellers as we capture our living in words. This multifaceted living with joy, grief, love, growth, and loss is shared among us in your legacy, your story. The things you choose to do with your days as they unfold matter here. I'm your host, Betsy Delzer. I'm many things, but in this gathering, I'm a painter, poet, and writer, and I'm honored to be your guide through these episodes. Together, we'll find our muses in the rich and heart-expanding conversations with incredible guests, many who are like minds and all outrageously inspiring hearts. When you press play, you're here in the circle to share this space with us. By Firelight.
Cynthia Reynolds is an artist, writer, and poet who sees the world through the lens of mystery and meaning. As a spiritual director, she holds space for others to listen deeply to their lives and to the sacred presence woven through it all. She is a mother, a grandmother, a wife, and sister, each role a thread in the tapestry of her life. Through the seasons, she has learned to honor the beauty of becoming, the wisdom of age, and the quiet power of presence. Her life is both offering and invitation to slow down, pay attention, and live with heart. Well, Cynthia, I am so excited to have you here today. I'm just so honored that you're a guest. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, as a form of introduction, what would your older or younger self want to tell us today?
Oh, my younger self, I think, would want to say, don't sell yourself short. Believe in yourself, even when against all the odds, like I was like skinny and freckled and red hair and, that no one understands me, no one gets me. And I would say just hang in there and believe in who you are, because who you are is going to be okay. You're going to get through the other side of this. Someday you're going to wish you had those skinny legs again. And just be true to yourself and hang in there. So that's what I would say.
I love that. I have such a sweet memory of meeting you, and I was trying to think of, it's got to be about 25 years ago, honestly.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. And I will say, admittedly, it was a time when I was still a little church curious. So we were in, and not to say that I'm no longer church curious, but I'm no longer church curious. That's a whole nother episode.
I know.
We were in a gathering space and we were told to sort of mingle among strangers. And I went up to you and I just remember the very same thing I feel today when seeing your face is just this soft, open heart is such a felt sense about you. And so I introduced myself and you were, I don't know if you remember this, I'm sure you do, but you were kind of thinking like, maybe I could be friends with your daughter, Jessica, right? And I asked where she lived and you said Boston. And
I said, I know, I think you would really love my daughter. And you'd be really great friends. And you said, well, why can't we be friends? And so that's how we started being friends.
That's how we started.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of clutching a paper copy of a newsletter that you were writing at the time.
Oh, yeah.
You brought me one several weeks later after we had kind of been corresponding a little. And I want to say this is an era like early cell phone use. So we hadn't really connected outside of this gathering space. And you brought me a newsletter. And I just remember like holding on to it and reading it at special times. And then we've just journeyed so much life since then.
Yes, I know. That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that newsletter, Bequest of Wings, from the Emily Dickinson poem.
Yeah.
And it was an experiment in saying, you can do this. Just start writing. And I know I think front and back, or maybe there were more pages. I can't even remember. I've got them all. I've got old copies downstairs. And I would do a featured piece on the front and then a book review. And I think I would put a recipe in because I needed to fill space. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do that.
Yeah. This like precedes the zine era. Like this was 100% like printed copy.
Yes,
This was, yes,
yes.
yeah, yeah. I want to trace then our connection just for the listener to kind of put some bearings. So that was several years ago, and pretty soon we realized we had this creative connection.
Yeah.
Then you journeyed with me. I remember you being there very soon after me giving birth to my first child. And, I remember you kind of snuggling a newborn and watching you with her in a way that I just remember learning just in the way that you were savoring her scent and her little crouched little nugget of a body.
I know.
I can still see that so clearly, that memory. But one thing that I'm just connecting the dots as we're talking and looking back is that here in our initial meeting and finding each other on this go around of life, you made the comment like maybe you could be friends with my daughter, and just making this connection that in many ways, especially through those years of early parenting for me and my children's early childhood, you ended up filling a real mother gap for me. You showed up in ways and had a lot of maternal and mothering energy that I really, really needed at the time. And at that point, we had probably been in conversation and relationship for probably, 7 to 10 years. But I remember receiving some handwritten letters from you or cards, or your presence, especially when I was doing a lot of gallery work, as just being this voice of affirmation and really a solid foundation that I didn't even know at the time I was needing or missing. Yeah. That really seems to link to then your role in our writing group, because I do feel like you inspire the road that we still have yet to pave for some of us in the group. You bring such a humanity to just the aging process and learning and living, just like your younger self was kind of advising. I feel like you have that voice of wisdom for all of us as well.
Well, I was just remembering back to those early moments, and you immediately turned to me and said, well, why can't we be friends? And it was a good question. Immediately I thought, why not? Why can't we be friends? And I think, it just sort of broke open that, you only are friends with people in your same age group, and do this thing that you do in life together have to be the same. And I love things that surprise me like that make me rethink the way I'm looking at life. And that was a moment of that for me. I remember that really clearly. And look at how many years later.
Yeah.
Your children are now grown and adults, and just seeing you through the pregnancies and newborns and all of that. And
yeah, we've really had the honor of holding and sharing some decades together.
Yeah.
Through that process, I want to kind of go down the road of you as a visual artist, because I know that is something that we have been closely tied to in each other's processes. So why don't you tell us just a little bit about, as far back as you want to go, but about your visual art and your world of textiles and fibers.
Oh, that's an interesting story, because I think when we first met, we were doing writing, and I always thought I'm a writer, but then I wasn't doing very well at it. So I thought, well, I'm not really a writer, but I don't really know what I am. What are my gifts? What are the things I'm really good at? And I remember that I like to play around with fabric, not necessarily just traditional quilts, which are wonderful. Some of them are gorgeous, and I have a lot of respect for quilters. But I wanted to do something different with it. I wanted to sort of take it in a different direction. So I just started piecing fabric and stitching on it and turning it into a canvas to create art on the fabric. And I loved it so much. For a long time, it didn't matter to me whether anybody else liked it or I was showing it or anything. I just was doing it for joy. So, and then after a while, I remember when you were looking at some of my things, you came over and you were looking at some things I was doing, and you said, I don't know anybody who does what you do. And that affirmation I mean, it was a statement, a question kind of, but it was such an affirmation for me that I still carry that as one of the inspirations for all of the art that I do. That was a long time ago, but I'll never forget the moment when you said that. I thought that's what I needed. That gave me the confidence to just keep going forward, because I thought I'm doing something that's just me, that's unique. And so, yeah, just inserting that.
I love that we have this volley back and forth of affirming one another. Very, very necessary in each other's process.
Yeah, in creative ways. Probably if we started really going down that road, we'd find a lot of things that we affirmed each other with. Parenting, I think.
Yes, I will. I have to tell this story because it's one of my favorite Cynthia stories, but it was, I always thought I was just not the best version of myself in like ages 0 to 5, and then I thought 5 to 10 is my sweet spot. That was all my years of being an educator. And, once we could play and hold a wild rumpus, I was ready to go. But those early years of development. Now, later in life, I feel like now I can like rock with preschoolers a little bit more easily. But with my own children, it was something that I questioned myself over and over again. And I remember my children being in the car one time and stopping by your old house. And I think I just had sort of a melty moment in the driveway. And you looked at me, and I don't know if you had your hands on me or not, but I could feel them on my shoulders. And you just said, Betsy, you are a factor. You're not the factor. And that was mine, right? Of like one of my truths that I clung to and still do as I am just continually trying to parent and trying to find my way, especially as a single parent and trying to do this alone, is I'm a factor and I want to be the best factor I can be, right?
Right.
But I'm a factor of a multifaceted little like village that's bringing up this child.
Yes, right.
And that was such an important moment in my parenting journey. So thank you for that. Yeah. So back to your art for a moment. For people who are listening and they don't know, so you mentioned some fabric, but how would you like kind of visually describe if somebody were standing in front of your piece and they're trying to create a visual while listening to us, what is something that they might see hanging on a wall?
Well, they'll definitely see the texture that textiles give us. And they'll see stitches, because stitches for me are the mark making, and it's not just design or embellishment. It's an actual saying something usually. And I think those are the main things people would see in what I do. And oftentimes people are curious about how I did it, what I had in mind when I was doing it. I think that people come with, when they see that it's fabric, when they see it's textiles, we have preconceived ideas about what that should be. And so they try to make the shift because they may like what they see, or they just might find it interesting, and they want to understand what's happening inside of themselves when they look at this. And so it's sort of fun for me to just talk about textiles as a media that it's usually relegated to being practical, like clothing, quilts, like I mentioned, and other things. And that's wonderful, but it's also can be just art media and abstract. You can cut up a whole bunch of different pieces of fabric and put it together and make an abstract piece of art with it. And also, I think just going back to the stitching again, I think the stitching is the mark making that sets it apart from quilts or more practical uses of fabric. And I've really enjoyed being able to do that. So,
and you're mostly using machines, is that right?
Machine and hand stitching. I do a lot of hand stitching, but the machine. So I do the free motion machine where you can move it around and create all kinds of shapes with the thread. So, yeah.
Does the free motion machine ever surprise you, or are you able to anticipate what it's going to look like?
That's really interesting, because I feel like I need to be in control of that, because it's a machine and I have to guide it through and do all these things with it. And sometimes I find if I just relax and I move it more slowly, I get a whole different vibe. I get a whole different visual. That has been a lesson to me over and over again, that I don't have to be in complete control here. The machine actually is, especially once you take off all the things that have it just guide in a straight line. Once you free it up to move where you want, you get in sync. You have this partnership. So it's like I'm one with my machine. Sometimes it's totally Zen moment.
Mm-hmm. I love that. The metaphors are profound here when we think about what it's like to softly surrender to the process, right?
Yes.
You have most recently, we've shown together, and actually the story that was coming to my mind as you were talking is, when people are searching for imagery or they're searching for meaning in a piece of work, there is a particular show that I remember where I had a very large piece of mirrored glass.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember this piece? It was this giant piece of mirrored glass, and I think I'd gotten it at like the Habitat for Humanity Restore or something like this. And I was playing around with water-based media, so like a watercolor, and I ended up using a lot of red. And somebody came up to me at this show of ours and said, "Tell me about the blood." And I remember kind of looking around like, wait, what? What blood? But it's like that sometimes, isn't it? Where people are trying to associate something, or they might pull something, And then I think the other thing that I've heard at both of our shows a lot is people just are like, "Well, my favorite is," and they want to tell you a favorite.
I know.
I'm kind of like, I don't really give a damn what your favorite is, but it's just So most recently, though, just to kind of close the loop on this this stitch, is to think about, you have had a show, or you have a show currently for those people who are around the Midwest at the Overture Center.
Yes, that's right. I'm part of a group show. The title of the show is called Threading Through Us, but I'm the only textile artist in this group. There's a watercolorist, a mosaic artist, and an encaustic artist. An encaustic is hot wax and pigment. And we have a poet, a fifth member, who has been our poet. For 2 years, we've been meeting, getting to know each other and understand each other's point of view on art. And Fabu, our poet, has been writing poetry about each of us and about the whole process. So we have a little booklet that we published called Threading Through Us that's full of her poetry. And we wanted the words. We wanted that element to it, as well as our own different voices speaking. So it's been really interesting because I feel like I'm very different from the other people, and maybe everybody feels that way in the group. But I have been able to relax into being part of this group and getting to know people more than I had known them before, and in a different way. And also it's been interesting to be able to challenge them with a different point of view, just because of the way I would see something or point something out that they may not have thought of. I would say they're a little more conservative in a lot of ways. And so we've had conversations that have kind of, I think, opened all of us up to different points of view and different ways of seeing art and the response to art. And that's really, it's been a really interesting, and you do get closer to people, but it's also interesting to realize that you still are aware of your differences, and yet you can grow closer and increase your respect and love for someone, even if you're very different.
Yeah.
So it's been a really interesting 2 years. And now the show is up at the Overture. We did a collaborative piece, and as you've seen it, and it's comprised, I think, of 79 12 by 12 inch squares, and it goes the entire length of the gallery wall. I created 20 pieces out of that to give you an idea of, we all each contributed with our media. The interesting thing is that it's one design, but 4 different media. And it's interesting, when you stand back, you see the design, but when you get closer, you see all the differences from one to the other, and how they kind of talk to each other. And So it's been really an interesting challenge. And I actually, our mutual friend, Bobette Rose, who is the encaustic artist and a multimedia artist, it was her idea to begin with. And she just led us in a gentle way that I think helped us really get to the end and feel good about what we've done. So,
wow. That in and of itself is an art form,
yeah,
isn't it?
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I want to go into this relational piece for just a moment because I'm thinking so many things that you were sharing were sparking memories. One of being when I had a show with Bobette and Barry Sherbeck, and we had taken a similar theme and then said each of us create something. And when we got together at the gallery, they were like mirrors of each other in totally different media.
Wow. Yeah.
It was one of my favorite moments of curating a show, because to see the three come together without, like, we didn't talk about what we were doing or how we were thinking about it. So that was incredible. But I'm also thinking I've really only spent 1 year collaborating and co-operating a show with other artists. And in that year was the time frame in which Barry's wife became really ill.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so you do share and carry a pretty intimate part of life when you're meeting regularly. I can only imagine over the course of 2 years how much more intense or deep that might have been.
Yeah, I'd say over the course of these 2 years, at the beginning, we just talked about it. We just would share our lives with each other. We didn't even talk about what we were going to do for the first few, maybe 4 months. Then we came with ideas. And again, I think it's Bobette's guidance in this, her leadership in helping us to relax with each other and get to know each other. And then when we would present what we thought would be a good idea to do as a group. I've never done a collaborative piece like this. I think I've done pieces that were in the same theme or that kind of thing, but something truly collaborative that is one design with different artists I had never done before. So it was, it was a challenge, but I think because we were all in it together, we were getting to know each other and learning to respect each other's art form. That all just played into making it really a pretty positive experience.
As you were talking about your experience and I was reflecting on my own, I think there are times when I'm also like learning about myself or learning about a version of myself in that space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like you find a little bit more out about a part of your identity when you are kind of linking arms, especially in the creative process. And this would be a really good segue, I think, to talking about writing and your identity as a writer, because you're one of the OGs in the spilling group. And I want to say here, this is a good point for me to interject that, you know, when I was thinking about ideas for a podcast, and I mean, really, it was years and years that I was like, yeah, that would be kind of fun. I think that would be cool to have conversations with people. And I'd had people throughout the years say like, oh, you should start a podcast. Then deciding like what kind of podcast to have was a bit of a challenge. But really, when I was thinking about a writing podcast specifically to honor our writing group, it was because there are so many crystal clear moments that I remember watching you read in our spilling group and read the work you had just completed that night. And I would oftentimes your face was lit by your phone light or, you know, something as you're reading it. And I would think, oh man, I would love to have recordings of Cynthia and to have her on a podcast. It always felt almost too greedy to have you to myself. And your role in the group is you're always our closer because nobody wants to follow Cynthia. So I do think this is a good segue though. And as we even make this transition into talking about our writing and your life as a writer, why don't you read something just here in the middle space?
Okay. I write just spontaneously, and especially in our writing group, prompts will come up and I just pour it out. I just put it out on paper. I try not to edit. If I'm going to want to hang on to it, I might try to go through and maybe change a couple of things, but I try to stay true to what came, what was just there and wanting to come out onto paper. And so this is one, I don't remember what the prompt is. I sometimes write the prompt down, but I didn't do that this time. So you just have to start like right in the middle. This could be the beginning of a beautiful, terrible, no good, wild, flaming heart, pounding, intense, that I already say beautiful, wrap around my head and heart moment, a phase, a life-altering gift. I am standing on the brink of this new phase as it slowly unfolds, bringing sadness and anger and remarkable joy that flirts in and out like a moth, looking for the lamp, looking for a light bulb. Smoke rises from the cinders and purifies the heartache. I take a stick and stir the ashes, wondering what it would take to revive a fire that is determined to die. A small charred branch that used to belong to the tree holds up its arms, dignity in the midst of disaster, desiccation, demise. I know that life ends, and before that, you have desire and dreams and determination. It all fades into dust. But what I have right now, in this never again moment, will never fade. It is the essence of the essence, the true, the beautiful, the holy gulp of wine and laughter, the silence of pen on paper, as hearts break open in the safe and the true together.
Beautiful.
So that's a little bit about things that are happening in my life, but also just the beauty of being in a group where this is what you can do. You can just pour it out on your paper and read it. And there is a respectful and beautiful holding of you as in what you've written and who you are or what's happening in your life. And I don't know. I think our group is extraordinary that way. I don't know. Maybe there's other groups who find that same element, that same beauty together. But our group has that very much. So
the essence of the essence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like some of your writing is kind of reckoning with mortality a little bit?
Well, it has. I don't know if it has been up till now. It'd be interesting to go back and reread some things looking for that and say, how long have I been thinking that? This is a very recent one, and it has really to do with health issues with my husband that are just bringing that up a lot more in the everyday. And so I'm looking at it differently. And of course, we know that life has a beginning and an ending. But it's when you're actually living in the moment with it. It's not. I'm not really afraid of it. It's not scary, but it is really different. It's new territory, and walking through it and navigating it, you feel very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing is like having a writing group, or group of. I don't know if we're a writing group or a spilling group. We are sharing ourselves on paper with pen and ink and paper, and that feels different than an ordinary writing group.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I think about your writing, I think there's a element of talking about this. Like there's some. I guess I would say talking about pain, the reality of when something can hurt, but you do it also through the lens of beauty and what you're savoring to get you through that. It always feels like there's something to relish or something to like really savor in what you're talking about or sharing with us, which is why, I have countless memories of looking around the circle and just seeing people wiping away their tears or just sort of sitting with their mouths gaping open at what you've just read. Do you have another one that you want to kind of follow that?
Yeah, I don't really have titles on all of them, but this one is called Tender, and I'll read this one. Beginnings and endings, daybreaks and nightfalls, tender in their regularity, safe in their repetition, they never seem to age, never seem to crinkle around the eyes, sag in the middle, soften at the jawline. Their mind never wanders, and they always remember to be just who they are. Never more, never less. They are complete and utterly perfect. And yet, they signify the passing of time, the ticking clock, the here today and gone tomorrow. They are relentless, repetitive, ruthless. With each one, each daybreak promising all things new, and each nightfall promising rest and renewal, I die a little more. They are the pathways that bring me closer to my ripening, my fulfillment, my completion, my sense of numbering, counting, and ultimately standing at the edge of one particular dawn and seeing the end of them all. And yet, my heart is glad with each daybreak, grateful with each nightfall, holding them tenderly in the palm of my hand while they dance me through, twirling me in the best, lifting me through the worst, cupping my face in their hands to fix my eyes on them and willing me to pay attention. Oh, you beginnings and endings, sunrises and sunsets, damn you for all the wrinkles, all the heartaches furrowed in my brow, at the worries that show in the graying of my hair. And bless you for giving me yourselves entirely, utterly perfect, tender and precious, open, wide, wide open, waiting to be filled from beautiful beginning to glorious ending and beyond.
Can you tell us what inspired that one?
Just thinking of the days that going by and how wonderful they are and how rich they are, but also each one you have just keeps you closer to the end, and just sort of the beauty and the difficult, the pain of that beauty and pain pulling back and forth. I could read you one but this is a really early one that I wrote in one of our very first ones at the coffee shop on Monroe Street where we first were meeting. And this is called Quicksand Dance Floor. So overcome am I by the brokenness and the joy around me. So far as the soul can see, like a quicksand dance floor, it alters my perception of everything. Dance a little faster, speak a little louder, get the moves just so, and all the bones will join together and laugh. It takes everything in me to slow dance. Take long, slow, deep breaths and slow dance. To put my arms around the neck of beauty and joy and pull close enough to smell her breath, closer than breath, closer than skin, and keep moving slowly, deliberately, luxuriously over the quicksand. The work is in the eye contact, the foot placement, the musicality, the gentle sway, hands outstretched and palms turned up, with spunk and spirit until the body gives out. The hope is dreaming on and on and on, and also not secondarily forgetting the fear and letting someone else place their feet on yours. And you move for two. Your freedom of movement is a miracle. Your step is a mercy.
What is it like for you when you're writing? What does it feel like?
Well, it feels like it's my true self is just kind of coming out, and
like the unencumbered.
Yeah. Without those barriers, without worrying about what anyone's going to think about it. You asked me earlier about what my younger self would say to me, and this idea of be yourself. And because I wasn't back then, I was always afraid. And I think that in writing, there should be a release, a freedom. Your real self comes out and you're not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What if somebody wants to write in this sort of free fall, sort of surrendered way, but they are still stuck with a critic or a block, what would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I'd say you're beautiful. You're way more than you think you are. Mm-hmm. And then I would probably encourage them to go ahead and write the things that you know are really the way they should be written. Go ahead and do that, but take 15 minutes out of every day and just write. Don't judge yourself. Don't critique it. Don't stop for punctuation even. Just write for 15 minutes. And I've seen that happen because I have led some writing groups, and that's how we always start. Just 15 minutes of writing without any hindrance, without checking yourself, critiquing yourself. Just let it flow. And you don't have to read it. You don't have to do anything with it, but it sort of opens you up and gets you started. So,
one of the things I think you've helped us all navigate, like a captain, I would say, of a ship, often in the pitch black of night. But one thing that you've helped us all navigate is some amount of heartbreak or loss or disappointment. And I was thinking a lot about, the wisdom that you would impart here. I sometimes create these podcasts and they do feel like they're just sent into the void. And it's like, it's like blowing some bubbles or sending a dandelion puff to the air, and you hope it lands and blooms somewhere. But I can think of a couple of even our friends who are regular listeners. I do think you have some words that could comfort the darkest hour type thing. What have you found in whether it's your decades or your lived experience that has helped guide you through those moments?
I'm not sure it wouldn't be just one thing. There's a lot of different things. I would say that I like to sort of talk to myself and kind of go back and forth, because there's times when I've really been afraid, and the fear really, really starts talking to me. And I used to really try really hard to push it away and just kind of carry on and be brave. And then I decided to befriend the fear and just talk to the fear that was in me like a friend, and just say, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me who you are. Tell me what's so important to you. It sounds a little strange, but it's just sort of having this inner dialogue of facing my fear and wondering and asking questions about it. And somehow it lessens the fear for me. It just puts it in its place. Mind you, there's times when fear is a good motivator to just push you forward. But I think for me, the fear just came from childhood traumas that resurface. And in this way, I can be gentle with myself and just let the fear be what it is, but not let it control. So
it's like it loosens the grip. That's
well said. It's well said. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that inner dialogue, when I think about like a prompt that somebody could even just take right now, right, is to grab a notebook and just identify anything that's occupying your attention or your mind, whether it's any type of emotion or thought or energy. And then I like the prompt, just tell me a little more. And as if that experience is talking back to you, right? Whether it's an experience of great elation or heartbreak, like tell me more, and letting your pen just move from the vantage point of that, whatever that thing is that you're occupied by or with, and you could even turn that into an exercise of beginning writing or continuing writing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I see you reaching for another. Do you have a piece that reminded you of to read?
Yeah. So this kind of fits what we just been talking about. And actually, I have a couple of them that do, because I think I write sometimes to myself, to that child that is talking to me, and I'm talking back. And in this one, I think this is the one. You don't have to be whole to be beautiful. You don't have to be full to be complete. You can be unfinished. a work in progress. You can hide the parts you want to protect and leave everyone in suspense. Yes, you have a dark side. Everyone does. The point is, you go through phases. You wax and you wane, which is just like us, which is just what we need. We need you to be a mystery. We need you to listen. While you tell us our secrets and write poetry by your light, we need to turn to you in our dreams to guide us in the dark. And we need you to hang like a paper song through the pale blue day. You don't have to be close to be comfort. You don't have to be smooth to be true. You don't have to flame to bring warmth. You just have to shine like a star.
I love that, like, excusing and permission that is happening there, right?
Yeah.
I think that is the element that comes up again in your writing about just like meeting yourself with some grace, some compassion. Yeah.
Yeah, not to be overly critical, but let what's there to really be and come forward.
Mm-hmm. I am picking up a thread of connection as we kind of use that as a little analogy and through line. But do you feel like we soften toward ourselves as we age?
I would like to think that's true. I know people who are very hard on themselves because they feel like I've lived all these years and what have I done? And I'm really all about looking at yourself with compassion and saying, well, what have I done? And what has it meant to me to do that? And just letting that be enough of an accomplishment. Let it be its own prize, its own reward, to be able to reflect and say, what have I done? And these are the things I've done. This is who I uniquely am in all the world. And I think those are the things that's what I would say myself.
You know, so often I'm teaching yoga and I am creating a class that I most need or that sounds good in my body. And I definitely speak to the room with the message that I need to hear. And yesterday I was teaching and I said something along the lines of, you know, in our practice, our strength meets us. You know, the strong parts of us meet us, as does our weakness. And then I just sort of paused and I said, and maybe the weakness is the strength. Because it requires so much.
Yes.
Those moments that are, whether you're in a physical asana posture and you're feeling like, oh my goodness, I can't hold this balance, or I'm going to topple over, or you actually do topple over, or a moment crouched in a corner, just holding your heart and clutching your heart with tears running down your cheeks, right? That may feel like, oh, this is a soft moment of weakness, but it is some of our strongest because we're right there in that space, meeting ourselves as you're mentioning and explaining. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about all the whole of who you are and to be seeing all of it as making up who you uniquely are. You know, we think that, you know, the self-made person has to take all these good qualities and make them work. And that is all that it's about. That's the sum total. But I think in addition to that, I think to look gently and kindly at ourselves and for all those things that we don't think are very strong or that all the things that we said we were going to do and we haven't done. Yeah. Everybody has that. So just to look kindly on that.
I love that. Well, speaking of things that I've always wanted to do and hadn't done, it was recording this podcast with you. So thank you so much. Do you have any last things that you want to read?
I do have one more that I could read. On a day when anything can happen, I want that one thing that's been calling me forever, that hovers just outside the circle of light and whispers a liturgy of what really matters. Like why, in the face of so much pain everywhere, we should still care. On the ordinary days, I wake up, touch my face, put my feet on the floor, and pull my trying to be brave self from the deep dreaming into the strangeness of awake. When I put the warm cup to my lips, when I feel the cloth slip over my head, the jeans hug my waist, and all of that, all I want is that one thing. I want to listen. I want to hear the pain in someone's voice, to see the tears in someone's eyes, feel the trembling touch of a life slipping away, and the lightning and the fighting to stay, to stand beside the cascade of sorrows that have to be there, even in the laughter and the rising and the dressing and the drinking tea. There was always that song overhead of all the pain, all the fading souls. I want to be there to witness the brave fighting for every minute, for every breath and every joy, the breath that says yes to all the just enough comfort and tells the whole universe to hold on to every breath, to hold on and simply be. So
it just lands like with such a deep sigh and great gift, just like always, just like listening to you in our circle. So I'm so glad we get to do this and share this, and you can share it with your children and your grandchildren and all the people that I have felt like, oh, they really should hear how brilliant you are. So
it means so much.
Oh, you're brilliant, bright light. You are a star. Thank you. Thank you for this hour, and thank you for the decades of our lives interwoven and stitched together. Where can people find you if they're curious about your art or if they're curious about your writing? What's a good way to look for you?
I have a website that I'm hopefully going to be uploading more current art on it. That's Cynthia Reynolds textileartist.com. And actually you could write to me on wildberrymom.com and go to the Overture Gallery and see the art there. There's other brilliant artists that I have the privilege of hanging with. And I think it's a show that really shows the differences and the unity that we have. So I recommend it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for this hour, and thank you for just blessing us all with your words and your wisdom all the years. Thank you.
Thank you.
By Firelight is a Lit Path Studios production and is produced by Jamie Gale and Betsy Delzer. Music is by Legito Music and Pond 5. Thank you for being a part of our beautiful collection of stories.